Hey everybody, it's Ark. Usually I do a Truth Hurts video, but today I'm doing an Amazing Spider-Man 2 review, so let's get into it. I'm gonna make this a quick one. I rated the movie a 7.5 out of 10, and now I'm gonna slowly break down why. First, let's begin with the story. Um, Story general basis was focused on primarily Peter's past and his parents more so than everything else, like even the whole Electro thing, like that played a part too. But the main focus this time was the background of Peter, getting more into him learning more about his past and his parents and what his father did, etc. But I'm not gonna spoil all of that for you. The plot moved the pace was very great. Like most movies, they jump around. Like, for example, I feel like the Avengers and other comic book movies jumped around in terms of the plot, and a lot of things didn't make any sense, and the plot holes were just great. There was still plot holes in here too, which I'm going to get into in a second, but the jumping wasn't as ridiculous as some other movies were. Um, the build up into the whole Electro scene was done very brilliantly with the score. Um, Kudos to Hans Zimmer because he did a really good job in this one. He does a good job most of the time, but the composing going on in this was very unique. When Electro first encountered Spider-Man, like as Electro, they played like little dubstep kind of song in the background, which was very subtle. But then, if you listen properly, you heard voices, and those voices could be symbolic of Electro, what's going on in Electro's head, because this isn't a spoiler because I'm pretty sure most of you seen the trailer. He, Spider-Man saved him from getting hit by a truck, and Spider-Man told him, "I need you out here. You're my eyes and ears." And he, in his workplace, he felt invisible, which I guess most people could relate to. He felt invisible. He did all this ingenious stuff, created this electric power grid that Oscorp is using, and got no credit for it. He was like a ghost, but Spider-Man, a guy who saves lives, acknowledged him. And so the build up into that, and then the fact that when he turned into Electro, and he had this obsession with Spider-Man after that happened, and it was his birthday and everything where he turned too. But he had this whole obsession and of being approved and wanted and loved. He wanted attention. So when Spider-Man came in, Spider-Man like forgot who he was, like forgot his name for a second. That like really bothered him because he thought that Spider-Man was still gonna remember him. So I thought that was kind of cool how it all played out. They got to the point. They didn't drag on the storyline like most of these comic book movies do. They got right to the point. They went from one scene to another. Went it was flawless for the most part in terms of, well, flawless, but it went well in terms of how it went from one scene to another. What I didn't care for too much was the guy who played Peter Parker. His acting wasn't the greatest. He didn't sell the emotions of the character when certain things occurred in the movie. Like, it wasn't believable. His crying was more humorous to me. Maybe that was just a personal thing, but became humorous thing to me. What saved his acting once again was the pace of the score, the action of the movie. It was well written. It was way better than the first Amazing Spider-Man movie. I felt with this one they paid attention more to the screenwriting and the whole navigation of it. Once again, the score really carried that movie for me, which gave it a higher rating than it would initially got. It wasn't a bad movie, it was good. I don't know what the critics saw. I saw a very, very good movie in general, not just a good comic book movie. But I didn't give it like an 8 or higher, because an 8 for me means that the movie was legendary, which means that I could go back to it any day and like, yeah, this movie was fucking amazing. I didn't feel that way about Spider-Man. I felt like I could watch it a few times, but it's nothing that I'll really check for in the future. It doesn't have that strong, heavy replay value. Also, let me get into plot holes. A lot of these comic book movies, they forget that a lot of these people that are gonna watch this, they're not like supreme comic book fans, so they won't catch all these little subtle things they're pointing out, or the fact all these villains, and then they don't give them a name and all this stuff. You'll see, like, if you didn't see the movie yet, when you watch it, you'll get exactly what I mean. But they just had shit like that happening where villains just appear. You have no explanation really of who they are and how they figured out how to use their powers. And then like towards the ending of the movie, it got really heavy in terms of stuff you would only understand if you're a comic book fan. For example, once again, this is not a spoiler because you would have to watch the movie to see it, but they made little references to the Sinister Six, but the way they did it was just so subtle that if you're a casual person watching, which believe it or not is the majority, it's gonna go over your heads. And I felt like the plot suffered at that aspect, that certain things weren't explained properly. They just happened. Like Electro just knew how to use his powers immediately. Like he just know how to do everything. And realistically, that makes no sense. You control electricity, a force of nature. You're gonna, you have to adjust to it and all that. So things just happen, and that's what threw me off for part of the movie, which is why it has a 7.5 and not a higher rating. The score, however, is a score that it stood out to me just because of how well it was done. A favorite scene off the top of my head was when Spider-Man was fighting Electro and the electricity was bouncing through the grid, and when it bounced through the grid, it sort of did it in a way where it was more rhythmic, so it became like its own song. Like, I thought that was very well done. I mean, most people probably wouldn't have paid attention to that, but I recommend if you do watch the movie again, just really pay attention to the music and how well it carries most of the scenes, like during the fights and when he's angry and all this stuff like that. It sold the movie better for me, and it got you more into it. And the reason why I'm emphasizing the score so much is because the music in combination with the visuals, you got to remember, a movie, what it is like a visual art piece, but then you have the sound aspect to it, the sounds and how high they are, the octaves, all that. That affects your emotions when you watch a film. That's what gets you into it. And I mean, look at a horror movie, thriller, any great horror thriller movie, the score was always perfect. But enough of that. That was just a preview of how I'm gonna review these movies. I did this one specifically for Kim. That was a wink. But I'll try to do more of these besides the Truth Hurts videos. Tomorrow morning I should release one on Infatuation. But this is Ark. Overall, the movie 7.5, like I said, but the score I give it a 10 out of 10. The acting for the most part was decent. But I felt the main character's lack of being able to show emotion properly was what didn't let this movie be as strong as it was. But definitely is a summer blockbuster worthy movie, probably one of the best movies this summer. But we have a lot. We have Godzilla coming, and which I also plan to review, and also Transcendence is out, which will probably be the next review. But till then, peace. Hope you enjoy the review. If you want a more in-depth review, if more people watch, like, respond, request it, I'll do it. I'll just make 2 videos, one with spoilers and one without. But this is Ark. Peace.